in the final scene of the 1990s movie Sister Act, all the nuns got on the altar and sang a song called I Will Follow Him. I Will Follow Him is just a popular song that was written in 1963 by Peggy March. And if you look up the lyrics, it's just about an imaginary childhood sweetheart that a young girl imagines will come sweep her off her feet, and happily ever after they would live. I will follow him. But if you look on the lyrics, it has two sets of lyrics online, one for the original, one for the movie. And there's just a little tiny little difference. The hymn, H-I-M, is capitalized in the one for Sister Act, but in the other list it was just a small h, which I think is appropriate because when the sisters got up there to sing I Will Follow Him, that hymn was Jesus Christ. That's why they capitalized it. But like them, all of us consider ourselves disciples of Christ, followers of Christ. And all through the scriptures, that's what Jesus did. And all of the Israelite people, God was constantly giving them leaders to rise up, and hopefully people would follow them, whether it was Moses or Noah, David, and especially John the Baptist, who at the time of Christ had his own followers, people who saw his life and said, I want that. He inspires me. I'm going to follow him. And all of the rabbis at the time did. They had little groups of people that attached themselves to them. The difference is John the Baptist, at some point in his ministry, he said to his followers, you need to follow him, not me anymore. I am not worthy to tie his sandals. You need to follow him and not me. I must decrease and he must decrease. And I think it is true that in all of us, even though it's kind of an un-American thing, because one of the things that Americans kind of champion is kind of a rugged individualism. Do it ourselves. Sometimes there's Christianity like that. But all of us in us somewhere look at other people and say, I want to be like that. I want to follow him or her. That's all around us, even in inner cities, especially young men with fatherless families will find somebody to latch onto, to talk like, to walk like, to dress like. We call that gang activity. But even when it comes to performers or famous people walking down the road, they'll create a following. There's even performers that have fans that follow them from town to town. That's where we get the term fan from, is a fanatic who follows them around. And why do they do that? Well, they feel complete, part of something bigger than themselves. They feel just a little important, attached to this person who they want to be like. This takes place all around us, and we know it. As I read this gospel, we have this image of Jesus, and he's going from town to town, and at some point, he turns around and he notices he has a crowd following him. He has a crowd following them, and he addresses them. We'll get into that in a second. But he turns around and found out he is kind of like Forrest Gump. He sees a crowd following him. For me, this is a profound memory, especially when I was a young boy. When I was in 6th grade, there was a young boy there, and his name was Joe Martinez. And let me tell you about Joe Martinez. First of all, 6th grade is the kind of early teens, pre-junior high. And as I said before, junior high people are not real people. They're not real teenagers. They're pre-teens. Their bodies are doing strange things. But I remember being in a 6th grade auditorium, waiting to go to class with the whole school, and Joe Martinez gets into a fight in front of the school, whole school, and he beats up a kid who's not very popular anyway. Teachers come in, administrators come in and drag him away, and he doesn't seem to bother him that he had just gotten into a fight. Well, Joe Martinez disappears for a few days, I guess for detention. He shows up again a week later, and again he gets into another fight. Tough guy, bully. He gets taken away for a few days, comes back again, and I distinctively remember being out on the playground after lunch and watching Joe Martinez walk around, and he had this little gaggle of followers behind him. Tough guys, and it is sort of the culture, if you can imagine, kind of the long shirts, the baggy pants, walking around, orale, this is my homework in my locker. Now, that's the culture. I'm not mocking it. I think it's kind of cool. I thought it was kind of cool when Joe Martinez would walk outside and his uncle would show up in those lowriders and with the boo, boo, boo behind it. I like that. But he was cool. He was tough. He was important. And he had a little gaggle of following whenever he would walk around. But he never turned to them and said, you know, guys, I don't know if you want to do this. I don't know, guys, I know you want to be part of me. And actually, part of me actually felt sorry for him because they were always kind of trying to get him to get into another fight so they could watch, so they could be a part of it. Again, Jesus walking from town to town, and he turns around and finds out he has a following. Now, what has he been doing that he gathers this following? Crowds of people, we're told here. It says great crowds were traveling with Jesus, and he turned and addressed them. So what has he been doing? Well, first, he's been healing people. All you got to do is look at the few chapters before. He's been healing people, miracles. He's been driving out demons, even talking to them, driving them out. But also he's been sitting with them and telling them compelling stories, compelling parables. And they're locked and loaded on his authority, his strength, his courage, even in the face of the Roman guards and the Pharisees and Sadducees who look jealous, but he doesn't seem to bother him that what he's doing might get him in trouble. But he turns to them and doesn't say, hey, follow me and you're gonna be happy. Turn to me and you're gonna be successful. Follow me, we're gonna conquer the world. Not really. He may say that later when he rises from the dead. But here he says, listen, people, if you want to follow me, I must come first in your life. Now, he uses kind of a Jewish hyperbole. You must hate your mother and father. No, it just means prefer mother and father, family, children. Leave your whole life behind. If you want to be a disciple of mine, you must make me first. You must give up everything to follow me. Sacrifice your livelihood. And then he says those famous words, you must carry your cross. Pick up your cross and follow me and join in this movement. Now that was probably quite shocking because the Israelites, the people there, they know what a cross is. That is an instrument of death. That is an instrument of loss and defeat and humiliation. Why would you do that? He's saying something radical. But he's also creating leaders. He's challenging specifically the men. That's right, I said it, specifically the men. Immediately he gathers 3 men, Peter, James, and John, and he starts his first little quad discipleship group. They in turn go out and find 3 more, and then we have 12. And he disciples them. He challenges them. He never lies to them. So if you're going to follow me, you're going to be one of my apostles, one of my disciples, your life's not going to be comfortable. Actually, it may cost you your life. But other people will follow you. At the very end of his life, he prays to God the Father at the Last Supper for these 12. Let them be one, as you and I are one, so that people may follow them. So people may be inspired by them to be leaders. So I guess today, as sometimes we do, I talk to you men. to be leaders in your families, to be the spiritual heads of your families. There's nothing more exciting and consoling for me when I see a family come in, carrying children, dad comes in, got children, and mom's coming behind, she's got children, and they go and sit in the pew, and dad immediately kneels down and starts praying. What is he doing? He's modeling for them. He's modeling for them. And as a person like everybody else here, we've seen what happens when you lecture kids. They don't remember anything. But they do remember what you do. They remember what you were doing, and they want to model that. And they also exorcise demons. They run off dangers. They carry their cross. They tell good stories, compelling stories, and they become the spiritual heads of their home. And young people want that. They desire that. You know, this past week, I've been telling people all week, but this past week, almost every day, someone has come up to me or called the office or just dropped in. And almost every time it's been a young man who said, you know, I'm interested in becoming Catholic. I'm interested in becoming Catholic. Now, I would have loved it if they would say, hey, you know, my dad, my grandpa was Catholic. I heard a priest online. I went to a church. No, it's always the same thing. I've been watching YouTube videos. I've been looking at Catholic content online. I'm not even sure I know what that is. And actually, the church may be a little bit behind. Pope Leo invited a bunch of content creators, is that what you call it? Content creators to Rome. And then they had their own convention, I think in Washington, D.C., a gathering of content creators, whatever that means. But now people don't have to go and ask questions of their pastor or go into a library. They just sit down and look it up. And they're looking for truth. They're looking for leadership. You know, in the early 2000s, all those atheists put out those books about there is no God, and they have lost. Now people are asking questions. Is there such a thing as truth? And we're in a unique place to answer those questions. You know, you can go back 2,000 years at that second reading. If you get a chance, go read the second reading. It's Paul's letter to Philemon. It's not that long. The whole book is like one page. It's one letter. Paul writing a letter to Philemon about this guy named Onesimus, who was a former slave. A slave of Philemon who ran away. And then Paul makes a profound statement in that letter. Here is your former slave, and I have become his father. I have become a spiritual father. In other words, he baptized him, made him a Christian, sent him back to Philemon, and said, now you treat him like a brother because I was his father. Now he's no longer his slave. He's one of us. This pagan slave found a spiritual father in St. Paul, and then he sends him back. What's ironic is that if you read some of the church fathers like Ignatius, this former slave Onesimus may later have become a bishop in Antioch a few decades later. We're not sure, but we know that he had a conversion. Now, having said that, if I can go back to Joe Martinez, I don't know what happened to Joe Martinez. At their 7th grade, he got into too much trouble and got kicked out of school. That was 1982. Well, I Googled his name. Joseph Martinez San Marcos. Just see what will come up. There is a man, I know this is on tape, so maybe I'll hear from him. The vice principal of San Marcos High School is Joe Martinez. Now, I looked him up. It has his little bio there. He kind of looks like him. I don't know, but it had his email, so I emailed him. Joe, is that you? He hasn't got back to me. There's like a good chance it's not him. It's a good chance he's not him. But I find it absolutely ironic that there's somebody in that school named Joe Martinez who's in charge of discipline. somewhere along the line, somebody had a father, somebody had a man in their life, and hopefully that is him. But everybody here, all you men and women, people are watching you. People are watching us, looking for truth. And as you come to Mass, come to adoration, come to the sacraments, every once in a while, you might want to look around. Is someone following you? Is someone keeping an eye on you? And that's good. That means you're doing something right. But when that happens, we look back to John the Baptist, who also had a following, and to these sisters in Sister Act, and say, don't follow me, follow him.